Hotline Miami is one of the most popular and influential indie games of all time. Whether people realize it or not, it took part in popularizing the 80s aesthetic into the mainstream. It inspired a ton of artists, game developers, and musicians to make something in the same vein. Hotline Miami is filled with neon visuals, vibrant colors, brutal violence, and an amazing soundtrack. The story told is dark, edgy, and at points scarily realistic. But all that is generalizing. What I want to do is to delve deeper into both Hotline Miami games and understand what exactly left such a huge impact on so many people, including myself. Hotline Miami 1 greets us with a runway of neon palm trees. Nowadays, this look is nothing special. This kind of aesthetic has been completely oversaturated and is seen everywhere, but back when this game came out, it was pretty different. It was both new and old at the same time. Oddly, the title screen is in Russian, the English part being way smaller at the bottom. The song being played sounds like it was ripped straight from a hippies fan. It gives you a feeling of being completely spaced out and high, and that fits the first game very well. Hotline Miami 1 feels like a long, bad drug trip. The game starts off very dark. You go through a short tutorial that's in a strange, unlit room. After that, you get introduced to the three masks. The horse mask, Don Juan, owl mask, Rasmus, and the rooster mask, Richard. The room is very dark, but clean, at least for now. Every masked character has their own lighting to accompany them, which also shows their personality. The horse is nice to you, so she's blue. The owl despises you, so he's red. He also seems to be wearing a Russian mobster outfit. And Richard is yellow, a color that doesn't really tell much, and that's definitely on point. Accompanying this whole scene is a song by Coconuts called Silver Lights. It's definitely the darkest track in Hotline Miami 1. Listening to it, you feel unsafe, threatened, creeped out, completely in line with what's going on. A perfectly terrifying nightmare. You return to this room 2 more times, and each time it gets more unclean. Garbage gets laid out everywhere. Flies flying across the room. It shows how the protagonist's mind keeps getting worse as time passes. Each level starts with an intro segment in the main protagonist's Jacket's home. At first, his home starts off looking normal, nothing really out of the ordinary. Funnily enough, there's also an Easter egg to the movie Drive, which also popularized the 80s style and inspired Hotline Miami. Every time you return here, there's small or big details that get changed. Once Jacket gets the girl with him, you can see their relationship progress slowly, and over time you will see furniture moved, the place getting more tidied up, until violence. Violence is the core of Hotline Miami. Despite the game being top-down and pixelated, the way you dismember, put holes in your enemies, choke them, and slam them against the ground feels brutal. It's so effective that people start questioning if this senseless violence you're taking part in is justified. Is it really just a game? Should games like these be allowed? Are they promoting murder? If you enjoy this violence, maybe it reflects what you are like in real life. All these questions you might be asking yourself, the game is super well aware of, but it doesn't give you any of the answers, just more targets to kill. In Hotline Miami, music is what drives violence. It's also one of the things the game is most recognized for. When people talk about it, the soundtrack always comes up as being amazing. The soundtrack is like a playlist of different artists that the creators liked. It's not one person creating a soundtrack, it's multiple. Most songs weren't even created for the game, but they all fit the 80s style really well. The upbeat music adds to the feeling of everything being a drug trip. It numbs you to the violence. but also it provides such a contrast between what you're actually doing. It feels so out of place if you stop and really think about it. Some songs sound goofy even. That's why you see it being used in a lot of memes even today. The songs also sound like something that should be played in clubs, and some even are. Oddly, you won't be able to say that about most tracks on Hotline Miami 2, which are way more dark in comparison. And speaking of dark, when you finish a level in Hotline Miami, the music abruptly stops. A dark static song starts playing, and you are tasked with going back to your car through all the dead bodies, blood, and guns left in your aftermath. This is how the game comments on violence, by snapping you back into reality and ending your brutal trance, making you see yourself for what you are: a monster. This is how the majority of levels end, and I'd say after playing the game 100 times, the feeling of guilt and uneasiness never leaves. Once you get into your car, a calm song starts playing. One that tells you that everything will be okay. This game really plays with your emotions in every level. First a build up, then action, then guilt, and finally, calm. After each level, you go to either a VHS store, grocery shop, pizza place, or a bar, and you always end up talking to the same character whose name is Beard. The weird thing about this is that he works at each place and talks to you as if nothing is wrong. But aside from that, he is the most comforting part about this whole game. He takes care of you, talks to you, and he feels like a true friend. And the song playing during his scenes is also one of the most chill songs in the game. As I mentioned many times, Hotline Miami is inspired by the 80s. It also takes place during them. We can see that through the use of VHS tapes, landline phones, guns that are appropriate to that time, and that the protagonist's car is a DeLorean. In the game, there's tons of post-processing effects on top of it to make it look like you're staring at an old monitor or television. Outside the environments of the game is a void. A void full of colors that fade between each other. In 2, it's more like constant ink splashes rather than just a color fade. The void also reacts to what you're doing. It flashes when you get a kill or finish a combo. It's also used a lot to set the tone in a subtle way. It's something that you don't really notice when you're focusing on the game. The environments you fight in are usually apartment buildings and houses, very messy and dirty at first, but as you progress through the game, you end up in more fancier places, the final level being the most luxurious one. There's also a little storytelling sprinkled out throughout the environments if you pay attention. You can find a dead body in one of the levels that has a mask near him. In the sequel, he becomes a playable character. The structure of the rooms are usually a mess. They seemed like warped versions of reality, which they definitely are. They are designed to be playgrounds for you to fight in. But this fact also unintentionally adds to the feeling of everything feeling distorted and a mess, which is fitting to the main protagonist's mental state. There comes a point in Hotline Miami 1 where everything begins to distort to an even darker mess, and it's after your showdown with the biker. Your visits to Beard start to become really weird. Stores become empty, there are now dead bodies talking to you, and eventually Beard himself gets murdered. Your missions get harder, you confront a SWAT team, have to fight a mob gangster that throws Molotov cocktails at you, and you burn his body as static TV noise jump cuts to your every action. Finally, you return home to find the girl dead and then get shot yourself. You were in a coma this whole time. The reason why most of the game felt weird and distorted, because in a way it was. Jacket, filled with a bunch of medication, was lying in a coma, recollecting all the events that happened to him. Whatever we saw was a messy recollection of his memories. It's not 100% correct or true. In that way, the game leaves a lot of interpretation for the player to make sense of it all. And now, trauma. The weirdest level in Hotline Miami 1. Instead of fighting anyone, you have to hide whilst you have headaches, which stop you from running a long distance. The music is completely haunting. The song Flatline by Scattle is the second darkest track to Silver Lights. In it, you can also hear a heartbeat monitor, breathing, and generally stuff from hospitals. This level, whilst hated by a lot of people, is definitely a special one that really is important for the story and tone of the game. After this, the game ramps up fully and leads to the finale. The final level, Showdown, is a boss level where you fight the head of the Russian mafia. The music is overwhelming. It sounds like a digital mess, a digital headache. After the mob boss kills himself, taking the satisfaction away from the player of killing him, we go up to the next room to find an old man, the grandfather of the Russian mafia. He says he regrets his actions, saying he has done so many horrible things, and asks Jacket to just do what he came here for. And so Jacket kills him, but there's still no satisfaction. All those pointless murders, they seem to have accomplished nothing. Jacket walks up to the balcony, lights up a cigarette, and throws something away. Credits roll. This ending feels underwhelming. There's so many questions left unanswered. In a way, everything feels way too simple. And the game knows that, as a VHS backs up and now we go through the biker's story. The biker's goals are just like the players. Finding answers to whatever the fuck has been happening the whole time. Phone calls, animal masks, murders, Russian mobsters. But the game, again, doesn't give you the full picture. At the end of Biker's campaign, you find the janitors, hiding in a sewer with a bunch of tech and landline phones. It's obvious that this is where all the phone calls are coming from. But the janitors only reveal anything to you if you find the secret password levels throughout the whole game. Combined together, they spell out, "I was born in the USA." 50 Blessings is an ultra-nationalist terrorist group that through the means of intimidation and threats gets people to commit murders against Russians living in the USA. Every member is picked seemingly randomly, and each are given an animal mask to carry out the murders. They identify themselves with a circle with 3 lines over it. If you paid attention, you could see it in most levels of the game. Hotline Miami is about war. It's an alternate history game to see what would have happened if the Cold War escalated. In Hotline Miami 2, The Wrong Number, every single aspect from violence to war gets explored in detail, and in my opinion, it's one of the most powerful stories ever told. Hotline Miami's 2 title screen is peaceful. The music is calm. The visuals are soft and in warm colors. The font for the title of the game is the only thing that's really harsh here. In the background we see Miami in what seems to be a storm. There's also a dense fog that fades in and out. First impressions of Hotline Miami 2 really set a different mood for the game. It feels more serious, and in a way more sad. You get the feeling that this game won't be as upbeat as 1, and that it won't have a happy ending. As great as this title screen is, It will become even more impactful as we return to it at the end of this video. Wrong Number is darker in every way. The color palette is a bit more dimmer. The music is way more hard-hitting, brutal, and serious. The songs seem to deliberately be chosen for each level to further elevate the mood it's going for, with each level having its own track. The similarities to the first game are in the few levels set in the same time as when Jacket was around. The environment there looks straight out of Hotline Miami 1. It's a very slight difference that's hard to tell at first, but it's there. In one of the levels, the song Divide by Magna plays, which sounds like a combination of all songs from Hotline Miami 1. And did I mention that it's a complete fucking banger? In Hotline Miami 2, we played through many different characters, each with their own different environment, story, and playstyle. The game starts off in a movie that's reenacting what Jacket did in Hotline Miami 1. It's a hyperbolic recreation of Jacket's murders, with a supernatural phone that just tells you to murder and an added rape scene for shock factor, a complete false interpretation of what actually happened. Martin Brown is the lead actor of this film, which is called Midnight Animal. In a dream, Martin claims that he loves the violence, saying it's something he wanted to do for a long time, showing that he might have gone too far with his role. The music that accompanies Martin feels heavier, more bassy, as if it's trying to embody the fat that carries his character. Curiously, the Midnight Animal levels are one of the few levels that actually has rain, adding to the fact that this is trying really hard to be as dramatic as possible. The other group of characters we meet are called the fans. We see them hanging out in a bar. People there are wearing animal masks. There's the 50 Blessings logo on the table, a table with a bunch of landline phones, a DJ set, and there's people outside selling shirts. It feels like a fan club. People idolizing a murderer and 50 blessings. Not really the message behind everything, but just the shock factor and style of it. They surround themselves with something that they don't understand. Tony claims, "This party stinks, I fucking hate these people." The fans understand the message more, and they want to do something like Jacket did. In truth, they are also just as blind as the rest in the party. All they become is low-life murderers. In their levels, it's made clear that you're only fighting drug dealers and thieves. Only one level has actual Russian mobsters that you fight. Evan is a character who is writing a book about Jacket and the other masked murders. He slowly gets closer to the bigger picture, that being the whole organization of 50 Blessings. He even interviews Biker, but doesn't believe anything he says. His determined goal to write the book also distances him away from his family. He spends less time with them, and puts himself in more danger. Evan is the only character in Hotline Miami that you can choose not to kill with, only knock people out. Although he is a pacifist, you can actually go into rage mode, where if you are persistent enough and actually kill your enemies, Evan will take off his shirt, the screen will turn red, and now he will be as brutal as every other character in the game. The song in his first level is very calm. It doesn't put you in a mood to kill anyone. Again, fitting for the character. Meanwhile, the track to the second level is haunting and discomforting, fitting for what happens in the story of the game and to Evan himself. There's also a secret level we can find as Evan called the Abyss. It's in a dark, unlit, strange place. In it we find what seems to be all the masks from Hotline Miami 1. They say to Evan that they had the deal and that they would be left alone. This level is a dream or hallucination that shows how Evan might be scared of what he might find out. The deal being that the truth of 50 blessings will stay hidden and not be revealed, in fear of possibly his own and the family's lives. Jake is the character from Hotline Miami 1 that we find dead next to the snake mask. He gets introduced with a dark, gritty guitar song as he shaves his head. His room is a complete mess. There's a 50 blessings newsletter on the counter showing that he has interest in the movement, and as a cherry on top, there's a Confederate flag on his couch. Jake is an ultra-nationalist in this story, a perfect candidate for 50 blessings, but he might be a bit too eager even for them. As he gets closer to the organization, they start to distrust him, thinking he won't keep a secret well. In the last playable level with Jake, he either dies if the player fails to complete the last floor without dying, or by the hands of 50 blessings, who take him away and shoot him in the head. All the characters I mentioned so far also represent the type of people who played Hotline Miami. Martin Brown is supposed to represent the players who like the violence in the game a tiny bit too much. The fans are players who like the style of the game but aren't aware about the underlying commentary behind it. Evan Wright represents the people who delved really deep into the story, trying to make sense of everything you do in the game. And Jake represents the players who might have really questionable views on things in life, which hopefully is the most rare type of player. In Hotline Miami 2, we also play as Russian mobsters. First the henchman and later the son of the Russian mafia boss that we killed as Jacket. We get one playable level with the henchman, because in the first scene he's introduced, he tells the son that he wants out. He's given up. He's tired of murdering people and being a criminal. But before that, he's given one last job. The song playing during his level is called Remorse, and it sounds completely somber. This is how Hotline Miami 2 utilizes the soundtrack to enhance the story. The son is the complete opposite of the henchman. He is insane and brutal. One interesting detail you can notice in their first scene together is that henchman blinks normally, while the son's eyes blink separately from each other. It's a small detail to show how unhinged he is. That's also a common trait with a lot of characters in the game. His levels are also one of the hardest and longest in the game. They also contain the most hard-hitting songs as well. His story revolves around a gang war with the Colombian mafia. He fights them in a nightclub, in their own bank, and in their headquarters. He even faces the Colombian boss by himself. He comes into his office, counts down from 10 as his men enter and completely destroy the mafia. Everything about his character is over the top violence. The main underlying tone is rage and revenge for his father. Very cool few details are the choice at the start of his levels. One of the options is the bodyguard's glasses, the woman you kill as Jacket in Hotline Miami 1, and the bloodline. It's a bullet with a date on it. The date written is the date when his father was killed by Jacket. Another character we get introduced to is Manny Pardo, who's supposedly a detective but goes on murdering criminals on his own. We get a lot of scenes of this character after and before levels, where we see how he is investigating the case of the Miami Mutilator. His first level's track is Technar by Perturbator. It's a dark track, and it definitely sets the right mood for the character. One of Pardo's levels, by the name of Dead Ahead, is in my opinion the hardest level in the game. It's a huge level filled with tons of enemies, Visually, it's distinct as it's more vibrant. You can see the waves crashing on the beach, the docks also sway and move, and the song perfectly complements this motion. Later in the story, we find out that Pardo is the Miami mutilator himself. One proof of this is that we can find a person tied up in his car's trunk that we find as one of the victims of the serial killer. Plus the fact that he tells Evan to do his book about the Miami mutilator instead. And some tiny details of how he visions a television crew following his actions, showing that he is obsessed with getting famous with these killings. And well, of course, his dream level, where he literally confronts his Miami mutilator persona. Manny Pardo is based on a real policeman of the same name, who in 1986 killed 9 people in Miami. His terrifying mugshot is very similar to the serial killer himself. After this scene, the place turns into a movie set, and Pardo drives to the police station in a golf cart. After getting cornered by the chief of police, he tries to escape, but gets cornered and killed. He wakes up from the dream to a phone call. He's being called into the station. He hangs up the call, pulls out a gun. Later it's revealed that he barricades himself in his flat. Richter returns in Hotline Miami 2 as a playable character. He is the character who kills the girl and knocks Jacket into a coma. His story by far is the most sad one. Richter is taking care of his sick mother who has trouble doing the most basic things, whilst he gets dragged into 50 blessings against his own will. He gets threatening phone calls, his car gets torched, and he is ultimately forced to lie to his mother and commit mass murder for the organization. He gets introduced to the story through Evan. He shares information about 50 blessings to him, in return for plane tickets for him and his mother to move away. The scenes with him and his mother are dreadful. The song playing during them perfectly encompasses everything. Meanwhile, his combat tracks are intense, but in a way also melancholic. With one exception being the Carpenter Brute song in his last level. Beard from Hotline Miami 1 also becomes a playable character. Him, Jacket, and a few others are part of an elite military squad stationed in Hawaii, fighting off Russians. This storyline is by far the most unique one. The environment is completely different. The void is gone, replaced by a vast jungle. The level transitions are also changed to fit the look. This storyline feels very dreamy. There's a scene on a beach that all the characters stare into, dreaming of what they will do once the war has ended. Beard answers that he wants to get a simple job at a convenience store or something like that. Visually, the levels look bleached, completely bathed in sun. The music is calming, with tracks like Java that are meant to give off the jungle feeling. Oddly, even the combat tracks are more calm and sound somber, which is really weird because they seem to completely not fit the long levels they're used for. But in the Hotline Miami comic, the picture is more clear. Beard longs for peace. He wants to get away from all the violence, and ironically, the way to that is through violence. One of the songs from his levels is called The Way Home. Beard's story is a long, bloody journey for him to reach peace, no matter the cost. There is another character that makes a reappearance. Richard returns with a similar role as in 1, but he is way more prominent. He judges every character and their actions, and in a way warns them that they're approaching their end and that they don't have much time. Who Richard really is hard to say. He's not a devil figure nor an angel, but it's clear that he knows how things are going to pan out, and it would be smart to listen to him. Unfortunately, barely anyone does. There's an interesting conversation that Richard has in his first scene in the game that's very reminiscent of his scenes in Hotline Miami 1. He confronts Martin Brown in his dream, warning him that he won't like how everything ends. And instead of asking if he likes hurting other people, straight up just says that he does. In a way, this is a jab to the player, because if you are playing the sequel to this series, in Richard's eyes, you already enjoy hurting other people. What he warned Martin about is his own death, as in the level preceding this scene, he gets shot and killed by a prop gun that had live ammunition in it. Evan on his way home gets asked for money by a homeless person. While he looks for change, the homeless man puts on a rooster mask and says, "Do I look like I want your dirty money?" Evan gets confused. Then his wife appears and says that they barely have money for rent, that he should stop trying to become a writer, and that she will take the kids and leave. Evan tries to calm her down and says that the book is worth it and he only needs time. Richard appears again and says that time is the only thing he doesn't have, and that maybe he should reconsider his priorities. Richard appears to the henchman as well. When he takes the bag of money, returns home, and tells his girlfriend that he quit the job, he goes to sleep. In the dream, he is driving far away into the sunset with the same bag in the back of his car. Richard appears and he starts questioning where the henchman is going, and states, "Without directions, a lot of people wind up going around in circles." Then warns him that he's approaching a dead end, then finally asks if he forgot to bring his girlfriend. The henchman wakes up, checks to see if the money is still there, doesn't find it, goes downstairs to find a letter from his girlfriend, saying she's sorry and that he would have done the same. Judging by his dreams, she is right. The henchman falls into depression after that and overdoses on the drugs given to him by the son. Then the fans arrive at the place he's at and completely tear it up. The fans find their first Russian mobster that they're going to kill, all of them thrilled by the fact of being just like Jacket. They drag him flat across the broken table and smash his eye in with a pipe. The henchman is in complete panic, barely understands if he's even bleeding, and begs them to stop. His final words being, "I just want to go home, okay?" Richard also appears to the fans. Mark brings in rooster masks to his group, and when everyone puts them on, they seem to be saying complete nonsense. Mark gets confused and a phone call snaps him back to reality. He was hallucinating everything. What his hallucination was of is what happens in the next level, Death Wish. The most brutal level of Hotline Miami 2, the climax of the game and story, where you play as every fan, killing a whole building full of Russian mobsters, to the most intense song in the series, Roller Mobster by Carpenter Brute. As Ash and Davis get to the roof, the sun comes out and shoots both of them. Mark's hallucinations were of them talking to each other on the radio during this mission. Richard was hinting at their deaths. Speaking of sun, he also gets visited by Richard. In one of the levels where he goes on a bank robbery, upon entering the vault, he sees his father, the bodyguard, and the grandfather. His father asks him what he is doing here, and the son responds, "I don't know. I want to make you proud." His father states, "Such things don't matter. I can see you haven't changed. You're just like me. You won't get it until it's already too late." Suddenly, Richard appears, telling the son that his father is right, and that nothing matters anymore. It's all the same in the end. In the last level of Hotline Miami 2, we play as the son as he overdoses on drugs. The game becomes a complete mess. We see his mobsters completely deformed as they glitch all over the place. We go on a killing spree of our own men and the fans themselves, who take the form of the animals of the masks they wear. The song being played sounds very similar to the last level of Jacket's storyline, but here it's even more fitting. This is a perfect send-off to Hotline Miami as a series. A fucking violence-filled acid trip of sound and color. After we kill the last of the fans, the son walks onto a rainbow bridge. In reality, he jumps off the building. After that, credits roll. But this is not all. Richard to all of the characters warns everyone about not having much time, that no matter what they do, it's all the same in the end. So what was he talking about exactly? Let's back it up first. After Beard successfully returns home after the war, he gets a job at a grocery shop in San Francisco. He's on the phone with Jacket, but hears something outside. Before we step out, we can see someone pointing, a woman with her baby as she seems to be covering her mouth, someone holding his head in complete disbelief, and a person praying. After we step outside, this happens. The Russians drop an atomic bomb on San Francisco. And this gives birth to Jacket's hatred, riots, violence, and 50 blessings. In the comic we can see after the nuke people protesting and shouting, "Not another San Fran." We also see the protests getting violent and people attacking innocent Russians, especially Jake. We can find a bunch of newspaper articles about the rising tension between Russia and America and the riots that ensue. America and Russia agree on a Russo-American coalition to bring peace to both countries. But this doesn't help much. 50 Blessings capitalize on people's fear and hatred of Russians after this incident. But who began this organization in the first place? The founder of 50 Blessings is the general from Beard's storyline. We can find that out in one disturbing scene of the game. The general, before the squad's last assignment, which seems like a suicide mission, comes to them wearing a purple panther mask, which has the 50 Blessings logo on it. We also see it in his room where he killed the panther and used its blood to create the sign for the first time. Whilst wearing the mask, he says, "This is my true nature. You see, don't you? This is who I am. This is who we all are. We're animals. There's no denying it. A bunch of goddamn animals. They're sending us out to slaughter or be slaughtered. And here we sit until they tell us what to do and how to do it. No will of our own. Just mindless obedience. We don't even know why we're fighting now, do we? All we know is that deep down, somewhere in there, we enjoy it. Destruction and violence. It's just a part of our nature." The speech itself is a blatant admission of the fact that we as people love violence. And is the game wrong? All our media, be it television or video games, are filled with violence and murder. True crime documentaries and police interviews about the most depraved serial killers and murderers are becoming more and more popular. Gore videos are everywhere on the internet and people purposefully seek them out. Because deep down, we might be afraid to admit it, but we enjoy it. I'm not saying that we as people take lives or want them to be taken, but there is something in our brain that makes us curious. Before this, people watched how criminals are beheaded. Now we can experience that through the media that is not real. and that's definitely a better substitute for it. This is what Hotline Miami right from the first game was trying to delve deep in, and this moment is truly the culmination of it all. I believe there's a pretty big twist at the end. I doubt you'll like it. In fact, I don't think anyone will. In the last scene of Hotline Miami 2, we see Richter and his mother in Hawaii. They successfully left the country and seem to be living quietly. Suddenly, the television gets interrupted by an emergency broadcast. The President of the United States and the President of Russia have been assassinated by a group of armed men, one of them being a US general, the same one who founded 50 Blessings. The experts believe that this will be seen as an act of war against Russia. They fear the repercussions may be severe. Richter's mother pulls out a rooster mask out of a bag, and Richard appears. Looks like you've gotten yourself quite comfortable over here. You know what they say about good times, don't you? Yeah, good times never last. That's right. For the first time, someone seems to be on the same level as Richard. Richter asks if they are onto him. Oh no. This is much worse. Richter asks if he has time. Richard says no, and that no one does, and that no one can do anything about it. Richter says, okay, no need to fight it then. I'm glad you understand. Richter is the only character that seems to listen to Richard. In fact, he didn't even bat an eye when he appeared. And for Richard to say that he's glad that he understands really shows how honest Richter is. After that, atomic bombs get dropped all over the United States. You Are the Blood by Castanets plays, a haunting yet beautiful song.
You are the blood flowing through my fingers.
We see the last moments of all our characters. With Evan, we had a choice to keep riding or call our family. If the player chooses to keep riding, he will spend his last moments staring down the nuke in disbelief. If we choose the phone call, he will spend his last moments with his family. This moment was foreshadowed in the game multiple times. Richard hints at it in every scene he's in. In a way, he wants everyone to reconsider what they are doing and what they will leave in their last moments. Another interesting detail is the 50 Blessings headquarters that we find as Jake. We can see it has a door like a vault or a bunker, with thick walls surrounding it. There's also a secret level called the Abyss, where we enter the same building but go even deeper. We can see that it's a huge bomb shelter filled with supplies and even a makeshift gym. It's made for 50 Blessings members. They were preparing for the apocalypse, so they could birth a new America. Most likely the red circle with 3 lines being the new flag. After completing the game, we also unlock hard mode that changes some things visually. All the levels get flipped, the void is now blue, level transitions and backgrounds are now of the destroyed Miami. Now, when we return to the title screen after the ending, we see it in a new light. The storm in the background is not a storm. It's the frozen last moments of Miami getting blasted by an atomic bomb. But what I find curious is the music. This title screen is clearly trying to foreshadow the ending, but it sounds so peaceful. There's a scene with Richter and his mom that's very easily missable. In the scene, Richter's mom describes a dream. You were sitting on an island with your father. You were both real quiet, staring out into the sea. It was all so peaceful, but there was something in the air. Something bad was about to happen. Richter asks, "Something bad?" She responds with, "I don't know. I can't remember what happened. Maybe it wasn't so bad after all." In a world like Hotline Miami, where violence and hatred are at every corner, where finding peace is nearly impossible, maybe dying and finally being granted that peace in this fucked up way is better. Maybe in a way, death can be peaceful, if we're in a world where everything is that fucked up and everyone hates each other. But what's scary is that our world is kind of heading into that direction. I mean, for fuck's sakes, the scene with Martin getting shot with live ammunition was so stupid and unrealistic to me when I played it, but then it actually fucking happened in real life. And now there's an actual war going on in Ukraine, with Russia being the aggressor, which is causing tension around the whole world. There's no doubt that there's violence against innocent Russians living in other countries happening now, just like what we see in Hotline Miami. And if it gets any more worse, I wouldn't be surprised if a group of people form an organization that's just like 50 Blessings. It's clear that Hotline Miami is not just fiction, but it's scarily becoming a vision of what our future could be, and that even the most terrifying things depicted in the game could happen. So if the moment ever comes that you're staring death right into its eyes, will you panic, try to effortlessly fight it? Or will you remember what words Hotline Miami ended with? Leaving this world is not as scary as it sounds. Thank you for watching.